Good morning, I'm Tom. With the advent of spring, I know a lot of you are either buying a new tractor or perhaps upgrading an existing tractor. And I want to take a few minutes today and just go over 5 attachments that in my experience, I think are the first 5 attachments that you may find useful. And so understand when I talk about this, I'm not talking about any specialized venue, like if you're a vegetable farmer, you're going to need something totally different than a cattle farmer. I'm just talking about the person who's got 5 or 10 acres and they want a bigger tractor than, say, their Craftsman lawnmower, and they're going to buy a tractor for their property. So these are 5 attachments that I think you may find useful. I'm going to talk about a few attachments that I think they're a pain in the butt. And I'm going to talk about a few attachments that you probably will never use. Behind me is an old 1956 tractor, and in 1956 they made a loader for this tractor, and the most common loader was a pipe loader with a trip bucket. And in 1956 that was better than a shovel for loading manure and picking things up. And that was the primary function those tractors were used for back in the old days. The farmers, it was a lot of work to shovel a manure spreader full of manure and then picking things up and putting them down. The advent of a pipe loader was like the best thing since sliced bread. They were single function valves, and what that meant was you only had power one way. So they had power lift, and then when you push the lever forward to lower it, what happened is that the oil that had expanded the cylinder was just able to float back into the reservoir. So there was no down pressure. The bucket just kind of floated down, and then you just had a latch mechanism to dump the bucket. In the 1960s, a lot of things started changing for the better as far as loaders are concerned. And so those of you who buy a loader today, you're going to actually probably buy a loader that's going to look a lot similar to those that came out in the 1960s. So to me, the most important function, or the most important number one attachment you should buy with your tractor, is a front loader. Today, most of you who buy a tractor are going to use the front loader for a lot of your work. You're going to be picking things up, you're going to be scraping, you're going to be putting things down, and you will invent 1,000 uses for the front loader and wonder how you ever lived without it. Lots of different loaders. Some are proprietary in their design, like John Deere and Kubota have a pin-on bucket, and then they have some cotter pins and some different kind of functionalities. They both offer a skid steer type attachment, which will cost you more money, but I would recommend that you start out, and it doesn't matter what color you buy, make sure you buy a tractor that has these skid steer type quick couplers. And all you do is you lift up this right here on both sides, and then you tip your bucket back, you tip your loader back, and you can quickly and easily change implements on the front of the tractor. So in today's world, skid steer type is the way to go. Some of the loaders will have the valve here on the frame, and when you take your loader off, the valve goes away and you're just left with a couple hydraulic outlets. Some tractors will have the valve on the tractor, so you can actually use your outlets for something else with the loader off. Generally speaking, the tractors that have the valve on the loader are your more economy models, so you'll find that it's just cheaper, there's a lot less plumbing involved, and so the valve just goes with the loader when it comes off. And if that works for you, that's fine. I'm just letting you know there's 2 different types available. In the old days, the soil prep was done with a plow and a disc harrow or some sort of groundbreaking device other than a rototiller. In the 1940s, they patented this design, and they've changed a lot since then, but a rototiller is a great way to pulverize the soil and prepare it for planting. There's different types. There's forward rotating, rear rotating. The rear rotatings are great for breaking new ground because they will dig in and they'll bury the trash. The forward rotating are great for gardens that are already established. Now, when you pick out a rototiller, your dealer should be able to help you size the rototiller for your tractor, but a rule of thumb is however wide your bucket is, that's the size rototiller that your tractor should be able to run. I think when you buy a loader, one of the most critical attachments that you should buy, and yeah, they're ugly, but a set of pallet forks. You will not know how you ever lived without pallet forks. One thing you have to be careful of with pallet forks is that it's going to extend your center of gravity over. So when you start loading things on the front, you're not going to get full lift capacity to that loader. And additionally, you're going to need more ballast on the back because you've changed your center of gravity now. So rear weight is going to be even more critical. When we start talking about ballast, you can fill your tires. There's calcium, there's beet juice, there's windshield washer fluid. My favorite actually is beet juice because it's non-toxic. If you spill it in your yard, it's not going to kill anything. windshield washer fluid is toxic, and calcium chloride will rot your rims away. Even though you put it in tubes, eventually your rim's going to rot out. So I'm a huge advocate of beet juice. No, they don't endorse me, so I'm not a salesman for Rim Guard, but it's my favorite counterweight by far. One of the other things that you can get on your tractor is called cast iron wheel weights, and not all tractors will facilitate the use of wheel weights because you may not have mounting points or bolt holes to put those cast iron wheel weights on, and wheel weights are very expensive, and so that's probably your most expensive option. One of the other most important attachments I think you can get, particularly for a smaller tractor or those of you with large areas of lawn, is some sort of mower. And there's a ton of different types of mowers. There's hay mowers, there's ditch mowers, there's rotary cutters, and I'm going to go over a couple right now. Even though this flail mower is on a 1948 Cub, they do make flail mowers still to this day. The advantage of a flail mower is that they don't throw material. It's forward rotating, so whatever obstacles or things they hit, it drives it towards the ground and not out the back or towards the side. And these are great for like ball fields and parks, or honestly I think they give a really nice cut, but they're very expensive. The second type of mower I want to cover is a finish mower, and they come in all different sizes from 4 foot up to 7 or 8 foot, and again your dealer can help you size that, and you can go maybe 1 foot bigger than the width of your bucket pretty easily with your tractor. So if you have a 4 foot bucket, a 5 foot finish mower should work fine. And the reason behind that is you're not really going to cut thick heavy grass. You're probably going to keep your lawn mowed, so it's not going to get out of control, and it's a lot easier to mow. So some sort of finish mower is probably one of the most common mowers that you'll see. This here's a fertilizer spreader or a spin spreader, and I've got it upside down right now. That's just how I store it. And it's kind of a specialized implement that a lot of you may not need if you don't have a lot of land. If you have hay fields or you're fertilizing or spreading lime over a large area, then a spin spreader is a pretty decent option. Some people use them to spread calcium on their driveways in the winter, but it's a really destructive element to put in your steel spin spreader, and they don't last very long when you do that. Now, depending upon where you live, if you live in the Great White North like I do, some sort of snow removal device may be in your future. And these days they make several different types of snow blowers. There's front mount snow blowers, there's reverse snow blowers that go on your back, so it's actually blowing forwards, but it's on the back of your tractor, and those are probably the most expensive snow blowers, but you don't have a sore neck at the end. I don't use my snow blower a whole lot. I use it to clean up around the edges of the driveway. So a 3-point hitch snow blower is your cheapest option, not necessarily the most comfortable option, but it does the job. And there's different types of snow blowers. There's 2-stage, which this one has the first stage here that pulls the snow in, and then there's a fan or an impeller here that blows it out the chute. And some of them actually have a 3rd stage where there's another auger in the middle that continues to pull it in. This here is a snow pusher, which is pushed up on its edge. You can see the skid steer type attachment part here, and so when it runs down the driveway, it'll look like this. Here's your skid shoes down here, and then it's just the box. So it's basically a front mount box blade that pushes the snow away. That's my favorite snow removal tool. You can also get a snow plow. You can get a rear blade, and a lot of people will take the rear blade and either turn it around 180 degrees and push backwards, or what I used to do is just leave it in the forward position, and then much like the reverse snow blower, you just drive over the snow and it pulls it along, and then you deposit it. On this Cub, which is a little hard to see, I've got a grater blade in the middle, and you can get different types of grater blades. You can get the ones that go on the back, and in some rare instances you can get some that fit in the middle, like on this one. Here's a corn planter, which is very specialized, and unless you're planting huge quantities of vegetables, it's not something you would probably get. I plant a lot of vegetables, corn, beans, sunflowers, etc. So a mechanical corn planter is something that I found very useful. This here is a reverse rotating tractor, and you can see the arrow, which way it goes. This can easily be converted, or I wouldn't say easily, but it can be converted to a forward rotating tiller by just changing the mounting brackets from that side to this side. To me, one of the most useful implements has been this trailer mover, and you can see I've got a Reese hitch here, and I hook some chains on the shackles here to kind of skid out logs with. And with the Reese hitch adapter, you can put things on it like this furrower here, And there's 101 different types of attachments. There's trash can movers, there's weight brackets, there's a million things you can put on this. And it's very handy for moving trailers around because you just lower your 3-point hitch down, hook up underneath the ball, and away you go. The one thing you need to be careful of with these, however, is that generally speaking, most tractors today, their 3-point hitch is, again, single acting, meaning they don't have down pressure, they only have up pressure. So they gravity down and power up. The problem with that is that if you've got a huge heavy trailer on the back and you stop quick or the weight is distributed funny, first thing you know, and you hit the brakes, that 3-point hitch goes up like this, and now your weight on your tractor is distributed differently, and it may throw off your center of gravity. So it's one of those things you need to be very careful, move very slowly, and obviously, stay off the hills if possible. Here are some suitcase weights that you could put on the back of the tractor to add some weight. You can see on this tractor there's big heavy cast iron wheel weights. One of the most useful attachments I found has been a York rake or a landscape rake. And if you're going to get one, I recommend the gauge wheels on the back, and that stops your terrain when you've gone over it from having waves in it. It kind of works like the grader with the mid-mount. It keeps the tines in the middle, and so it fills in and tears off the high points. If you don't have the wheels on the back, it makes it a lot more difficult to maintain a level playing field. For those of you who have animals and you have a lot of round bales, a round bale spear is one of those critical implements that you have to have. This one was a 3-point hitch model, you can see there, and at some point I'd bought this skid steer quick attach plate here, and I just attached it, and I've never taken it off. But this thing right here allows you to put 3-point hitch attachments on the front, so in theory you could put your landscape rake on it and push it instead of pull it, or more commonly I think put a grader blade on there. But now you've got your weight way out in front of the tractor again, so it makes turning kind of a premium, and also your weight distribution is kind of screwed. These are various sickle mowers, and these are specialized for the tractor that I have, but the new ones have a 3-point connection on them. And so this is one way to cut your hay if you decide to do so. Your least expensive option for counterweighting your tractor is a 3-point hitch weight box, and some people fill them full of concrete or they just make one out of concrete. This one has a Reese adapter on the back down there where you can slide the hitch in, and if you fill it with sand, it's got a little trap door that you can let the stuff out. This is the cheapest way out for ballast, and sometimes when you have a small tractor like that little Mahindra I showed you under the barn, you actually need 2 types of ballast. Those tires are loaded, but I also have a weight box or a tiller on. The tiller is a little bit big, and so in tight spaces it doesn't really fit very well, so the weight box comes in handy at that point. But with a tractor that can lift a lot, and even with the tires loaded, your center of gravity is still moved forward, so you really need more weight than what you think you do. Snowplow for an old Farmall track. And while I'm on the subject, even though this was specially designed for the series of Farmall tractors 70 years ago, it's not really all that different than the way it is today. So if you buy, let's say, a new Kubota or a new John Deere or Mahindra or whatever, and you buy a blade for that tractor or a loader or a backhoe, those are specifically designed for that series tractor, and you'd be really hard to find another tractor model that it fits on without serious modifications. And so be careful about buying a secondhand loader, snowplow, snowblower, backhoe, because they're very specific as to what models they'll fit on, and retrofitting or modifying those for a different tractor is going to be very costly, if not impossible. So if you're going to buy a front blade or a backhoe, snowplow, snowblower, something that is fixed to the tractor, loader, you want to buy that at the time of the tractor purchase, and then you can lump the whole thing into your financing. Otherwise, if you buy it later, you have to pay separately, which is fine. That's actually a better way to do it, to pay it in cash. But a lot of people who are buying tractors, they want to finance the whole package together and then just have one payment and pay everything off. So when you start out and you want to buy some attachments, I think the most critical ones that you can get are the ones that are going to be specifically designed for that tractor, like your loader, snowplow, snowblower, and a backhoe. Honestly, I think a backhoe is a huge amount of money, and it's a big investment, so you really want to think about that carefully before you buy one. And it's not one of those things that you want to come back and buy later, because you're going to have another trip back to the dealership. They're going to have to plumb the tractor for the backhoe, most likely. you're gonna have to install it, you're gonna charge your freight, and the whole spiel. So if you decide that you have to have a backhoe, you should get that at the time of the tractor purchase. And backhoes are very expensive, so be very careful and think about it for a little bit before you decide to buy one, because most people, myself included, even though I've got a big farm and I would use a backhoe quite a bit, I found that the backhoe I have sits on the fence row most of the time, and they're not cheap. And so, to be honest with you, my nephew has an excavator, and the price he charges me to come over and do excavating work, he can do it in a third of the time and really doesn't cost that much. So just a word, something to think about before you buy a backhoe. But if you are insistent upon a backhoe, you should buy it at the time of purchase. Here's a disc harrow and a set of plows, and this is the old school way of doing it. Personally, for prepping the garden in the spring, I like the disc harrows because it makes the seed bed a lot easier. It makes it firmer, and the seeds take better than with a rototiller. And the plow, I use that in the fall to turn the trash under. What I mean by trash is like your leaves, your corn stalks, etc. It buries it, and then over the winter, if you throw manure on it in the fall, it puts it all underground and it composts a lot better. This here's what I call a bush hog, and it's made by Tevin. It's one of those things like a York rake, even though it's called something else or made by somebody else. It just has a generic name. So some people call it a brush hog, some people call it a rotary cutter. It's one of those things that I guess it just depends on where you are as to what it's called. I call it a bush hog. And when you buy a bush hog, again, it's probably going to be the size to the width of your tractor bucket, and it's also going to depend on where you're cutting. If you're just cutting some reasonably small grass, you can get away with a bigger one. If you're cutting heavy brush, corn stalks, things that are going to use a lot of horsepower, you might want to go a little bit smaller. Just a side note about bush hogs, rototillers, things of that nature. There's two types of mechanisms that transfer power from the driveline to the blades, which are underneath the deck here I'm standing on, and they go through a device. Here's your gearbox here on the back, and that's what changes it from this way to this way. But in between the driveline and that gearbox, they have two options. One is the slip clutch like this one, and the other is simply a shear bolt design. So what happens with the shear bolt, it's kind of like this bolt right here. If the pressure is too much and it hits an obstruction, rather than destroying your power takeoff in your tractor, what happens is that bolt shears. And more often than not, if you're in some heavy brush or heavy material, when you're cutting, you're going to be getting off that tractor a whole bunch and changing that shear pin out. So I have a slip clutch on here, and it's very important that you adjust it correctly, and I do have a video on how to adjust the slip clutch, but it has to be adjusted correctly or it doesn't even work. So to wrap it up, I think your 5 most important attachments besides the tractor are a front loader, pallet forks, some type of blade, whether it's a front blade or a rear blade to move material like snow or dirt, etc., or a box blade. Box blades are a little bit limited. They're great for working on your driveway and scarifying and digging into heavy material, but they're not going to be really great for snow removal. Some sort of mower, and most commonly it would be, I'd say, a finish mower like that first Citrix I showed you, or a bush hog like the Tevin over there. That'll do most of your cutting that you need to have done. Again, there's specialty mowers. There's, like I've discussed, the flail mower, and the sickle mowers, and there's hay mowers, but most of you aren't going to be doing that. So some sort of mower, either a finish mower or a bush hog. And then 5, I think, is kind of a tie between either the trailer mover, which is super handy. I mean, you don't need it. You can still get off and wrestle your trailer onto your drawbar of your tractor, but the trailer mover really makes your life a lot simpler. You've got that Reese hitch on there, so it makes it really easy to put different attachments on. And I think Heavy Hitch has a whole bunch of stuff that's specifically designed for that Reese. And so I think it's tied between that and a rototiller. And if you don't have a garden, you don't need a rototiller, so problem solved. But if you do have a garden that's bigger than 10 by 20, you're gonna find that a rototiller will make your life a lot simpler. A couple attachments that are cool to have: a snowblower, some sort of teeth on your bucket, because your bucket with a smooth edge, it doesn't dig very well. And so while you can scoop, when you're trying to get into like gravel or something that's going to be a little bit more bulky, like with rocks and stuff, and stumps, that the tooth bar is going to give you a little bit more bite. But be careful with the tooth bar, because what that does is going to put a lot more pressure on your tilt cylinders on your bucket. So you want to be careful not to hyperextend those, and then they'll bend. So just keep in mind to be very, very careful when you start adding more things on, and that includes pallet forks, your snow pusher, bale spears, etc. Don't extend your dump cylinders or your tilt cylinders too much, and your owner's manual explains that to you, because what happens is it just changes the strength of it, and you'll find that happens, and then you're going to have a costly repair in your hands. And the most cantankerous implement that I have, and I only use it a few times a year, when I need it, but I absolutely hate it, is my post hole digger. And the new ones, they come with a stand a lot of times, so it makes it easy to hook it on and unhook it. I've seen people bury the auger in the ground. I've seen people make some kind of contraption to hold it up, suspend it, and I generally put mine on some cement blocks with some blocking on it, and I have to put it where the cows don't go, because they'll start scratching on it and dump it over. But it's really cantankerous. Your center of gravity gets put up high, and mounting those by yourself is just a real bear. So this right here is the most cantankerous implement I have, and I hate it so much. It's a real bear to put on, and the center of gravity is up here, and trying to maneuver this by myself, it's almost impossible. What I have learned is, when you put it on, is to do your 3-point, your draft arms first, and then you can kind of tip this up and hook it, and it's a little tricky, but you can do it. You just have to be careful you don't bend your shaft here or screw up your gearbox in any way. So it's one of those things, I need it, but I absolutely hate it. So that's that. And the last thing, I could go either way with it, is a backhoe, and you're looking at a $10,000+ investment. If you only have 3 to 5 acres, I think it's behoove of you to really weigh the cost of that backhoe versus how much it would cost you to hire it out for the limited number of tasks you're going to have. And initially you'll buy it and you'll have 100 things to do, and you'll use it that first year all the time. And then once your landscaping's done and your 3 to 5 acres, you're going to find that you don't have a whole lot of things to do with it. And then to turn around and resale the backhoe, again, it's only made for a certain series of tractors. Maybe they stop making that series of tractors or whatever, but trying to sell that backhoe later on, you're going to find you're going to take a real beating on it. So I just encourage you to think very carefully before you buy a backhoe. But buy that loader with your tractor. You're going to find not only that you can dig a lot, scoop a lot, carry a lot, pick things up, put them down, but the resale of that tractor down the road, when you decide you want something else, or if you just decide it's time to get rid of the tractor, a bare tractor without a loader has a limited consumer base. I like loaderless tractors for farming because I don't have that stuff on the front, but generally speaking, homeowners, small farmers, they want a loader on their tractor. They're not going to buy a tractor without a bucket on it. They just have to have it. So if you're going to buy a tractor, I think you should spend the extra $5,000-$7,000, get the loader with it, and I don't think you'll be sorry. Hopefully this video has been useful to you in determining what implements to get with either your new tractor or your new old tractor. If you know of some implements that you think I missed that are important and that you should get, please comment down below. I really want to hear what you have to say. And as always, I appreciate all the comments, the likes, and if you don't mind, I'd be honored if you'd hit the subscribe button. And we'll talk to you next time. Thank you for watching.